Good day to everyone. Welcome back to the second part of the series, Let's Talk About Love. Before I go into the real part of the topic, I want to emphasize two things that I did not mention in the previous session, the session number 1. The first thing I want to talk is that we need to remember that love is a plant. It's a plant and needs growing. Even myself, when I was contemplating the marriage with my queen, I always emphasize this to her because love needs to be developed also. We should develop that love in the proper way, knowing if it's God's plan. Therefore, we need to work together, knowing that it needs to grow more and more. Then the second aspect that is important also to talk about love in the marriage life is that divorce is not of God. God hates divorce, actually. In the book of Malachi 2:16, we know that God emphasizes and says there that He hates putting away. Now, the word putting away in the Bible reference means divorce. God is never intended that divorce will be given. It was not His plan. In reality, when divorce comes, we are actually saying that His love ends. So it is not a good definition of God or the word love. It means that you put a limit into love. Love does not have a limit. God has no limit. His love is eternal. It never ends. So love is not a good picture for our children of the character of God. So don't forget that. Divorce is not a good picture for our children to learn the love of God. When you divorce, you are going to teach your children with that aspect, with that step, that the love of God is not complete. So divorce has never been in God's plan. So it is hard to believe it, but it's a truth. Now I can tell you my own story. I can tell you my own experience. My father, when he was going to marry my mother, he told my mother these two things. He says, if we marry, number 1, we will never divorce. We will stick together until the end. That's number 1. Second, the conditions actually for marriage is if we married, you can be angry with me. That's what my father said to my mother. You can have all the problems you want against me, but you never stop doing your duties at home. You don't want to talk to me, you may have been angry, no problem, but you still do what is your part in the home. So my father taught me that, and I think I learned the lesson from him. And that is exactly what I told my queen when we married also. I married, there is no divorce. And I married, and we can be angry, but we have to continue doing our work. I take it as an advantage, and I recommend you follow that. Don't forget, 1 Corinthians 13 is the basic chapter of love in the Bible, and it's very important as we consider this second section or aspect of the Let's Talk About Love. Let's review it. Love is patient and is kind. Love does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing. Rejoices with the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. So the title for this presentation today is First Love Never Dies, Knowing the Genuine Partner. Revelation 2:4 says, nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee, because thou hast left thy first love. We don't want God to be against us because of that. We want to keep that first love. Jeremiah 17:9 says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. who can know it? Now we know that any one of us is being born in this world of sin. There is nothing good in our hearts. The only way that we know that somebody that is for us to have a partner is good is because God has transformed that life. We should not be blind into this aspect. Each one of us may have something that we had done wrong in the past. That's normal. You will probably never find someone that is completely clean in his life, that has no record in the police in heaven. The idea is that we have done many things wrong, and we have to consider that. We have to be forgiven. Of course, we want to make sure that the life of the person already shows an improvement. It shows a change of life, that God has changed that. That's what Galatians 2:20 is important. And then Proverbs 3:5-7 says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path. Be not wise in thine own eyes. Fear the Lord, and depart from evil. So for you to choose a person, or when you are choosing a person, make sure you remember this. Do not trust yourself. Do not trust your feelings. Why do we say that? Because yes, there is important aspects that sometimes people talk about love, and they may say, you know, I have a list. Oh, I want my wife to be this way, this way, this way, this way. She needs to have blue eyes. She needs to have this kind of dress. She needs to have this kind of... We may have a list, yeah, but we may have the wrong list. Because what are the aspects that we really want to consider are significantly different from what God wants us to consider. As we talked in the previous session, number 1, we know that some of those aspects that we may have already written in the list are not really important for the Lord, and we have to review them. Example, the age, too young. What about the preparation of that person? Example, a girl for the home. You know, if we talk about even the preparation as a mother, as a wife, as a father, as a husband, God is very emphatic and simple. If we are not ready to be fathers, and if we are not ready to be mothers, we are not ready to be married. That means we have to study, yes. Even study, yes. God says himself we need to study the physiology of the body, how to take care of the body, the relationship between the mind and the body, and the effect of the food and the body on the mind, and vice versa. Knowing these things and how to take care for children when they are sick and we are not, it is necessary before we even consider having children. We should study those things before we even marry. And not doing these things, not preparing for that, God considered a sin. If you have not read that, go to Child Guidance 63.3, 63.4, 63.5. Keep reading those next paragraph there. You will see those 3 paragraphs, 63.3 and on, where God says himself that not preparing for before marrying, before being a father, to take care of the children well, to know the relationship of development, prenatal influences, and all those things. Not knowing those things before marrying, before having children, it is considered a sin. So we need to have those things in the list, the things that are important. What is important for the Lord? Put it in the list, not the ones that you feel. Oh, I feel like I like this, I like. We have a problem with self. We want our own way, not God's way. That's why it's important to ask God what is in his plan for us. 1 Corinthians 13, more than words, more than gift, ability or knowledge, more than giving and sacrifice, love is character. What is the character of the person that you are choosing? Is that important? Yes, the most important thing in the world is character. In the education, the most important aspect is character. Why is it that character is so important? Well, because character is the only thing that we take to heaven. There is no other thing that we take to heaven, not even our clothing. What is that going to be? I don't know, but that's what it is. Love. Long suffering, kind, not envy, not egocentric, not proud, not rude, not altruistic, not insecure, unprovoked, think no evil, just, truthful, forbearing, believing, hoping, enduring, unfailing, more than profession, timeless, endless, perfect, mature, transparent. Galatians 5:22 says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. If we follow these and we prepare ourselves before marrying to have the character of Jesus, it's the best, utmost thing we can ever do. Some of us may not be able to do it. Some of us may be even on training in the same time. But you must know that our character is an important aspect that we must see before marrying. You know that Satan baptized people in the church? Do you know that Satan even married people in this world? Yes. God is very clear in his writings that Satan knows the character of one. He knows the character of the other one. He knows they are not for each other. He knows they are not compatible. And then he makes them believe they are. He makes them to marriage. And then when they realize, once married, that they are not for each other, then the problems come. Satan himself married people. He pushed them into marriage. He put them together. And then problem starts. Satan even baptized people in the church. He brings them to church. He puts them in the Baptist place. He pushed them into accepting because he knows they are not ready for baptism. He knows that when they go in the church, they will do more harm than will be a blessing for themselves. Therefore, he puts them as missionaries, like terrorists, to kill themselves inside. Satan does that, so we have to be aware of his work. Now let me tell you one thing that I have been recommending to all people: study this and really be careful about it. In the choosing, I know that Satan has been working a lot in these two aspects. These are two things that Satan is working really hard. Number one, Satan is very busy making men dumb, that they don't know anything. Second aspect is that Satan is working really hard in making women very successful. And after that, he puts them together. So imagine this, which is what is happening in the world today. Where are the boys? The boys are growing up without knowing anything to do. They don't have a trade, totally opposite of God's plan. We talked about that already. They know how to game, they know how to play, they know how to do nothing. And then, after that, Satan works also making women very successful. They know how to speak English, they know how to speak Tagalog, they know how to speak maybe other languages, they know how to play piano, they know how to do business, they know how to have a bank account, they know how to keep a home in the proper way. Now Satan says, okay, I'll put these two together. Boom, they marry them. And then when they open their eyes to the problem, unhappiness comes and many troubles comes in that home. The woman has a very hard submitting to a husband that is not looking after his family. And the husband has no idea how to rule the home with a woman that is very successful. Therefore, this problem increases and increases, and the home becomes a miserable place. So I don't recommend today to women, especially friends, students, that they will enter into a marriage where she is younger, number one, that she is a professional and he is not. At least there should be some kind of knowledge that he is more mature and that he has the ability to rule his home in the proper way. Therefore, the need of knowing the responsibilities of fathers, the responsibilities of mothers, before we get into marriage relationship. Another aspect to think about it. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three, but the greatest of these is charity, love. 1 Corinthians 13:13. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. 1 John 4:8. Remember we talked about that, the definition of love. Love is a principle. When the heavenly principle of eternal love fills the heart, it will flow out to others, because love is the principle of action and modifies the character, governs the impulses, controls the passion, subdues enmity, and elevates and ennobles the affection. Testimony for the Church 4. Matthew 5:44 says, But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. John 14:15 says, If ye love me, keep my commandments. 2 Peter 1:5-7 says, And beside this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge temperance, to temperance patience, to patience godliness, to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. So what we are seeing here in the ladder, Peter's ladder, is that for us to get to the point where we get to love in the proper way, God's love, even for our relationships, either marriage or others, we need to go through steps in the development of our characters, as we see written in the Bible. Love is not blind, but reasonable. How many times you may have heard people saying that love is blind? I heard it before in many areas in the society, many areas, even television or even in other public things, supermarkets and things like that. Love is blind, but love is not blind. God says it himself. Pure and holy affection is not a feeling, but a principle. Those who are actuated by true love are neither unreasonable nor blind. Why is it important to see this aspect? You know, when some people are together wanting to get married, there are many times when they tell me things like this, but we are already going to marry. And I said, well, it doesn't matter. If you see that it's not God guiding the relationship, even though you have a date for marriage, you can still cut that marriage and avoid pain, because you can take that away, break that date, and then ask for God's guidance from then on. But if you marry knowing that you are not to marry that person, you will have no opportunity to break it after that. Once you married, it should be forever. That's God's plan. Marriage is not an underwear that you just put on and change whenever you want. You see, that's another aspect in the development of our children that we need to be careful. When our children are taught that they do what they want and they get what they want, we are just telling them they can do that in the marriage relationship too. And that is not correct. We should teach our children that we do not get what we want, but we do what is God's will. When we learn that and we develop that in our characters, we will easily see in our marriage also the same responsibility. Marriage is not an underwear you change whenever you want. God says you stick to it, it is forever. So if we don't understand that aspect, marriage will be always a problem. Adventist Home says, pure and holy affection is not a feeling but a principle. Those who actuate by true love are not unreasonable nor blind. These precious articles is very rare. Passion is termed love. Love which is awakened by impulse and which suddenly dies when severely tested. Passion is not love. Passion is just a feeling that could be present in the relationship. We are not saying that passion should not be present in a relationship, in the husband and wife, but we know that passion is not love. So when somebody feels passionate or passion doesn't mean that he has love. Love could be infatuation. What is infatuation? The man who is bound in the chains of this infatuation is too often deaf to the voice of reason and conscience. Neither argument nor entreaty can lead him to see the folly of his course. We need to be very careful because infatuation is very common. People think that they are in love when they are really not. So we have to make sure that we understand the difference between love and infatuation. So what is the difference between love and infatuation? Number one, infatuation is a feeling. We know that love is not a feeling. Love is what? It's a principle. You don't love just because you feel it. Love, it's a principle. Love, lifted out of the realm of passion and impulse, becomes spiritualized and is revealed in words and acts. A Christian must have a sanctified tenderness and love in which there is no impatience or fretfulness. The rude, harsh manners must be softened by the grace of Christ. What an important paragraph. Shun love-sick sentimentalism. Imagination, love-sick sentimentalism should be guarded against, as would be the leprosy. So we know that when we are not with the true love, we should be very careful. We know it. We have talked about it. Religious profession. There are persons who have for some time made a profession of religion who are, to all intent and purposes, without God and without a sensitive conscience. They are vain and trifling. Their conversation is of a low order. Courtship and marriage occupy the mind to the exclusion of higher and nobler thoughts. What this is saying is, if you see that the person that you are supposed to marry, all they are talking about is marriage, love, honeymoon, there is no other things in their mind, you know that there is no maturity in that person. There is no real reason of marrying. You have to have many things answered before you can marry or you should marry. And love, it's based on principles, and there are many aspects on marriage, talking about specifically about marriage, that you have to answer before you even accept that appointment. Religion profession. Song of Songs 2:7. I charge you, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, by these roes and by the hinds of the field, that ye stir not up, nor awake my love, till he pleases. Do not arouse or awaken love until the right time. Song of Solomon 2:7. What does that mean? Many people eat the cake before the time. We have a problem in our society that many people think that marriage is just like an underwear. You try it, and if you don't like it, just change it. Look for another one. That is not the way God wants us to do things. God says, when you get to one person, that is it. You don't change it. So what you have to do is make sure that it works before, meaning you know that it's God's will, not because you try it. It's not God's will to be trying. Therefore, it is not God's will to have sexual relationships before the marriage. There's no blessing in God when you do that. Now let me tell you, that's just what God says. Let me tell you what I read myself when I was looking through this, studying about these things. I went to the magazines that talk about, psychiatric things or psychological things. And I was reading about what is the most common problem, or what is the side effect or the result when people have sexual relationship before marriage. Of course, they are not married yet, but they want to try. So the idea is that psychology says that when these things happen, most of the time what happens is that the husband and wife, if they marry, the same person's married, they will always blame each other because of what happened. In that case, from then on, the marriage is always a negative feeling. You don't want that for your life. But we know that even science itself, the psychologists recognize that when you go into premature, relationships before marriage, it's fornication basically. You are entering into a field of no blessing. God will not be able to bless you, and you have to be careful with that. 3 most important decisions in our life: conversion, religion of life, the education, the career that we follow, and the marriage and the family life. We should not change this order. So it's important that we consider if the person is already in the path of the Lord, if the education that they have is enough to be fathers and mothers, that they know have the character of Jesus, and then also that we marry for life. There are many cases that we have in life, and there are many people that talk about one thing or another one. But let me tell you what I consider and I have been recommending to people. It is not safe to think that you can make the person that you want to come to the Lord, to be baptized, and then after that, you can marry. Most of the time, according to God's recommendation, is when you do that, you will fall. And then the person will not get into a relationship in the Lord that is substantial, that he can stand, and he will just go out and continue in the wrong path. I have seen it myself in many homes where the mother has even given Bible studies to the men, so the man baptizes, and then he is not in unequally yoked, and then they get married, thinking that they can transform the life of that person. What God is basically saying is, when things are done that way, you are not going to have a complete surrender of heart. The person is doing it because of an interest, not because it is real love to the Lord. That's the reason why when I do myself presentations, I preach and so on, I do not allow and I don't accept people playing piano when I do my calls. Why? Because God says that everything has to be in a reasoning mood or mode, meaning the person has to think about the truth. He has to settle it in his mind. He must meditate and he must reason. That's why Isaiah 1:18 says, "Come, let us reason together." God says, don't come because of feeling. Don't come because you think that you're feeling something towards me. God says, come to me and reason. You see the truth. You see everything, and you decide to take a step because of reasoning. If a man sees a woman and says, I will become an Adventist because she looks good, because I want her, it's exactly what Samson did in his age when he was on earth. He fell in that, and we know that it's not a good principle. we must make sure that the person has a good relationship with the Lord before we even think about marrying. Conversion of self and others. Divine grace in the newly converted soul is progressive. It gives an increase of grace, which is received not to be hidden under a bushel, but to be imparted, that others may be benefited. He who is truly converted will work to save others who are in darkness. One truly converted soul will reach out in faith to save another and still another. Young ladies frequently give themselves up to study and to the neglect of other branches of education, even more essential for practical life than the study of books. These young ladies might have come from their schools in health if they had combined with their studies household labor and exercise in the open air. What is God says about education? One of the things that I tell my own daughter when talking about the education is this: if you want to be a cook, you have to learn to prepare God's food palatable. If you cannot say that you can make God's food palatable, you are not a cook. You cannot say that you are a cook. That's number one. Number two, if you are going to be preparing for marriage, you must know how to prepare God's food palatable. You must learn how to do all these things, including preparation of breads at home, orderlies of the kitchen, management of the kitchen. You must learn all those things, even the sewing of the clothes, before you can even think of learning how to play the piano or the violin. Going into learning these things, violin and music and all that, without the proper preparation of the practical duties, it is a fail. And before marrying, you must have mastered all these details before you can even think about it. So in the preparation of my daughter as a future woman, I make sure she knows all those things. The proper education before, as I said before, Child Guidance 63.3. We must have those knowledge before we marry. Your education in married life has begun. The first year of married life is a year of experience, a year in which husband and wife learn each other's differences, traits of character, as a child learns lessons in school. In this, the first year of your marriage life, let there be no chapters that will mar your future happiness. We know then that the first year is very important. I also recommend married couples that will take some time. The first year, it's important to have no children, even two. I had myself 2 years with my wife. We didn't have any children the first 2 years because we didn't want to damage our relationship. We wanted to have a good base and we spend time together and have a good remembers also after years. So it's important to consider that. So it's important also that we consider all these aspects as we choose the person that is correct. We have to talk before. There is a time correct for courtship. We will study that in the next presentations about correct courtship and marriage. But for choosing, we have to have a good foundation. We should not get into speedy marriage. I want to, I need to. Or even think, oh, the train is going, I'm too old. No, the right person is the one who God sent. One that is prepared, that have the character of Jesus, and both are working together in the same level. Now there's one more aspect that I want to say before I finish this section, and this is it. When a husband or a man is getting ready for a marriage, and he has a ministry for him to give, the wife that is going to come on board should be a maid, as the Bible says. It should be a helpmeet, meaning it will help the husband. If you as a husband see that your wife will take you away from your ministry, from your goal, then you know that it will not be a good thing. So make sure, men, you know that aspect, and make sure, women, you know that aspect too. You are made to help the man. There are some marriages where the woman is the one who has ministries, who has goals in mind. He has no goals, no ministries in his mind. Well, you have to consider all those aspects, because if you are not willing to be helping in the ministries that she has in mind, then you're going to have trouble. Second, if the woman has the idea that she wants to be the leading, then you're in trouble already, because God has assigned things in the proper way. If you really want to have you the leading way, the only way you can have a successful marriage is if you find a man that is willing to submit to you. And you know that you are not doing God's guidelines into this aspect, because the Bible is clear in how men and women were made. Of course, the society that we have now, some men are more passive and women are a little more active maybe. As I was telling you about the problem of our society, and you have to consider all that aspect. You must know yourself also and talk to the Lord regarding those aspects yourself. What is your goal and what is in front of you? What do you want? My best recommendation is follow God's plan. That's the best. Of course, we know that there are sometimes things that you cannot avoid, but if you want to do the things in the proper way, make sure that you as a woman get ready to be the help of your husband, and the man to be the man to lead the home. I will recommend then that you watch some of the videos that we have done before previously, especially the one called Home Leadership, which will lead you also to have other ideas before you get into the marriage relationship with a good foundation. I hope this presentation, the second one, will give you the foundation to see who is that person you are going to choose, who is the right person for you to choose, so you can have a marriage that will honor the Lord and will give you happiness forever. And that you can say at the end that you will walk the streets of gold, going in hand to heaven, together as a marriage for the Lord too. May the Lord bless you.
He's Coming Broadcasting Network.